If you ever rent a cabin in the middle of nowhere, check the attic first. Trust me, some guests never really leave. My wife and I have been married for 6 years, and we've always done the same kind of vacation. Beaches, hotels, too many people. This year, I wanted something quieter. I told her, let's just go somewhere peaceful, somewhere we can hear ourselves think. I found this small cabin in northern Maine. The photos made it look perfect. Pine trees, a little lake, one road in and out. I'm not the type to get paranoid, but I do like knowing what's around me. So before we left, I even looked it up on Google Maps, checked reviews, everything. Nothing weird? The first 2 days were great. We cooked, read, played cards. I remember saying to her that the silence there was the kind that makes you listen. You start noticing the ticking of your watch, the creaks in the walls, every distant sound. On the third night, we both woke up around 2 a.m. because of footsteps on the deck. At first, I thought it was an animal. My wife squeezed my arm and whispered, "That's not a raccoon." I got up, grabbed the flashlight, and looked through the window. Nothing, just fog and trees. I went outside, barefoot, stupidly. But all I found were 2 sets of footprints on the deck. One was mine from earlier that evening. The other wasn't. They led down the steps and stopped at the tree line. I tried to calm her down. I told her it was probably the owner checking on the place. But in the morning, I called him anyway. He said he hadn't been there in over a week. That day, little things started bothering me. The back door, we always locked it, but it was open that morning. Some of our snacks were gone from the counter. My wife swore she hadn't touched them, and I hadn't either. We tried to laugh it off. But that night, I woke up again, this time to the sound of something moving inside the cabin. It was faint, like fabric brushing wood. I sat up, whispering my wife's name, but she was already awake, staring toward the kitchenette. "Someone's in here," she mouthed. I grabbed my phone for the flashlight, but before I could turn it on, there was a soft creak, right from the storage hatch in the ceiling. The attic, I'd never opened it. The next morning, I waited until daylight and pushed a chair under the hatch. My wife begged me not to, but I'm stubborn, and honestly, part of me needed to prove to myself it was nothing. I opened it and climbed halfway up. The first thing I saw was a pile of clothes, not ours. A jacket, men's jeans, a toothbrush, an empty can of beans, and next to all of it, wedged between the beams, was a small Polaroid photo. It was taken from inside the cabin. I recognized the back wall, the lamp, the couch, and us, my wife and I, sitting together reading, smiling. We packed up that morning. I didn't tell her about the photo. I just said I wanted to leave early to beat the weather. But the whole drive home, I couldn't stop thinking. If there's one photo, there might be more, and someone somewhere still has the camera. If you ever see a woman standing, alone at the Lampugnano bus terminal after midnight, don't. Look at her twice. She might still be waiting for the people who took her to come back. I work in an emergency room just outside Milan. Night shifts are quiet until they aren't. Until someone walks in carrying the kind of story that sticks to your mind, like static. That night, she came in around 11. American passport. No luggage. Eyes like cracked glass. Her jeans were dirty from travel, and she kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to follow her in. "I just got off a Flixbus from Germany," she said. "Someone injected me with something at the Lampugnano stop. That's not the weird part. The weird part is how calm she was. We took her vitals. Normal. Reflexes fine. She looked exhausted but alert, calm, and terrifyingly coherent. When I sat down to talk, she spoke perfect English, every sentence clean, deliberate, like someone used to being ignored but determined to be heard anyway. She said she'd been kidnapped as a child, not for ransom, not for custody disputes, not once, repeatedly, by the same people. "They're part of a trafficking ring," she told me. "They took me when I was 4. They always brought me back home without marks. So my parents thought I was making it up." I tried to keep my tone neutral, writing notes, the way you do with possible psychiatric cases. Then she told me she'd married one of them. He was part of it all. I didn't know. We had 3 kids. They're gone now, killed. I remember my pen freezing mid-sentence. Her story shouldn't have made sense, but it did. Too much. Names, places, embassy visits, police reports, all recited like someone reading their own case file. Always the same pattern: disappearances, threats, poisonings. When I checked later, some of it matched. French police had indeed logged reports under her name. Filed, closed. No evidence. She asked for blood work. "They poisoned me with arsenic 3 weeks ago," she said. "Now they've injected something else." Her labs were clean. But one of the nurses swore he smelled bitter almonds while changing her IV. Cyanide. He laughed it off, but he didn't sleep the next night. Around 3 a.m., she started talking about Ukraine. "If I volunteer," she said, "they'll give me a 5-year residence permit. I'll finally be safe. When she reached into her pocket, I thought she was pulling out a passport. It was an old US diplomatic ID, expired years ago. The agency printed on it didn't even exist anymore. Dissolved after a trafficking scandal the State Department quietly buried. I didn't say anything. I just kept writing. At 4:12, I went to call the psych ward. No beds, none in all of Milan. When I got back, her bed was empty. Just an open window. The curtain fluttering. A hospital gown on the floor, beside a small white cloth damp with something we couldn't identify. Security footage? Gone. 4 minutes missing. Cameras froze at 4:07, came back online at 4:11. 2 days later, I got an envelope in my locker. No sender. Inside, my own ER report, her wristband, a note written in shaky blue ink. They poisoned me again. If I die, they are not imaginary. The hospital archived the incident as voluntary disappearance. The report vanished from our system a week later. When I asked about it, administration said it must have been a file error. That was last year. Sometimes, when I finish a late shift and drive past Lampugnano, I see a woman standing by the Flixbus bay. Same coat, same pale hair. She doesn't move, doesn't blink, just scans the crowd. Once, I swear she looked right at me, and I felt it. That same cold certainty from that night. Maybe she wasn't crazy. Maybe she was running from something real. And maybe, whatever it was, found her first. My family's pumpkin farm has been around since the 1800s. Not because we're good farmers, but because someone has to stop the pumpkins from coming alive. All right, Noah, my dad said. It's time you learned how to work the field. Do I have to? My dad had inherited the pumpkin farm from his father, who'd inherited it from his father, and so on, going back to the 1800s when our family first settled the land. He wanted me to take over the farm one day, but I had no desire to do that. I planned to leave as soon as I turned 18, which was only 5 years away. Yes, you do, he snapped. Now get in the truck. Fine. I got in and slammed the door. He climbed in beside me, and we drove to the pumpkin patch in silence. Here! My dad handed me a pitchfork and a spray bottle after I'd gotten out of the truck. What am I supposed to do with these? Follow me and I'll show you, he motioned. He walked over to the nearest pumpkin, sprayed it with his bottle, and then stared at it for a minute before moving on to the next one. He sprayed half a dozen pumpkins like that before I interrupted him. What is the point of this? I'm trying to show you, he replied. Just wait. He continued spraying pumpkins until I interrupted him again. What's in this? I held up the bottle. It's a ferrous iron solution, he replied. Why are you spraying it on the pumpkins? He sprayed another pumpkin. When the solution hit it, the orange flesh of the gourd turned black and began to smoke. That's why, he pointed. He dropped his spray bottle and held his pitchfork in a two-handed grip. Get ready, he warned. The roots of the affected pumpkin erupted out of the ground, and the face of a jack-o'-lantern, lit by an eerie green glow, appeared on its ribbed surface. What the hell is that? I dropped my spray bottle and readied my pitchfork as the monstrous pumpkin charged at us. That's a jack-o'-lantern, my dad said, a real one. The jack-o'-lantern launched itself at my dad, but he was ready for it. With one swift motion, he threw his pitchfork, spearing it in midair. The jack-o'-lantern released an unearthly squeal as it fell to the ground, where it turned to mush. This used to be a fairy glen, my dad explained as he retrieved his pitchfork and spray bottle. The old magic of the place still permeates the ground and sometimes gets into the pumpkins. If I hadn't seen the jack-o'-lantern with my own eyes, I would have thought he was pulling my leg. It's our job to weed them out and make sure they don't make it onto someone's doorstep. What happens if they do? Remember those boys that were mauled by that dog? Yeah. It was anyone talked about for months. It wasn't a dog that mauled them. Those boys made the mistake of stealing one of our pumpkins before. I had a chance to weed out the bad ones.